Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Kathy Palmer. I'm the Executive Director for TTRA, and I'm happy to introduce Jason Swick from Simpleview. And they are going to have a coffee and data chat with us this morning. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat box, and we will be monitoring it throughout this hour, and we will be answering questions at the end. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. As if you haven't seen my face enough on the layover, if you watch that every single week, super happy to be here for this coffee and data chat this morning. This is going to give you hopefully a chance to meet the Simpleview Strategy and Insights team. I'm not, my wife tells me sometimes I talk too much, so I'm not going to talk too much without some visuals. So I wanted to make this a little bit more exciting than normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through some slides. If I can just get 10 minutes of your time, it'll allow us to kind of give you a little bit deeper insights into who I am, who our team is, what we're here for, why we've made the changes that we've made, really to help service all of you as destination marketers out there. Now, during this week, I had the team crunching really hard because we wanted to see how long it took to drink a cup of coffee, which we've provided hopefully to you this morning through Starbucks. We came up with just under 10 minutes. So my hope is that I don't take any longer than that to run through this with you and Paul, or with me and Paul rather this morning. But I do want to share some slides with you and kind of jump right into things. So let me share my screen here. And hopefully I have nothing scary on the screen at the time. Okay, let's do that. Okay, can everybody see my screen all right?
Yeah, it looks good over here.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. So I'll just start and get running. Okay, so let's just jump right into it with our coffee and data this morning. Again, I've got just under 9 minutes. I'm not Star-Lord. This is a good depiction of me. I just love these dance moves, so I wanted to make sure I got them in there for you. My name is Jason Swick, though. I am the VP of Strategy and Insights at Simpleview. I'm part of Simpleview's executive leadership team. Been with the company now for a little over 10 years. A lot of changes happened in that time. We've had some of the folks who are actually on this call with me this morning have been here for a long time as well, some new, but it has been certainly a wonderful ride along the way. I do love playing golf. If anybody knows me, they know I like to play golf. It's one of my passions. I'm getting to the point now where my youngest son, Dominic, is starting to beat me, which is not good. So I need to get out there a little bit more, and hopefully after this pandemic, I'll have a chance to do so. I spent a little time angel investing lately, which I've really enjoyed. And most of all, I love spending time with my friends and family. As I mentioned, as we first came on, I'm the host of the weekly digital marketing podcast, The Layover Live. And so as I say in the show, if you're not subscribed, please do so now. We would love to have you as a subscriber on there. And all we're trying to do with that is provide insights to you each and every week that hopefully help you do your jobs a little bit better. But we have been in a really challenging time this year. As we've mentioned, as we talk about data, COVID-19 has resulted in nearly $500 billion of total losses to the US travel economy. All of you have seen this. It's been horrific, right? I think I saw some stat recently that said, just to put these numbers into perspective, I think if you asked like a friend of yours to count to 1 billion, it would take something like 95 years or something. So it's an insane number that I think sometimes we toss these numbers around. We toss around a billion or a trillion without really thinking about how much that affects all of us, right? But that's an amazing, massive number. Travel's been hit the hardest, and we've seen it even across all of our websites. We do aggregate a ton of data across all of our websites, which Paul is going to show you. This data that we've put together in dashboards is available to all of our Simpleview clients at any time. And our team is also available to help you digest some of these things. But we've seen huge losses in traffic. We aggregate, right now it's probably closer to 300 DMOs, analytics data anonymously and privately. And then we share that. Our lowest time was on April the 12th, which we saw traffic hit a low, and it's been steadily starting to bounce back a little bit here and there. It dipped a little bit after July the 4th as we started to see some cases start to spike, and we've seen some of that happen recently, which is crazy. But what it does mean is that more than ever, we need to recognize that every visitor to our site is an opportunity, right? We should have been thinking about those things before, but it's really going to be valuable now. Now more so than ever. And I love this quote from Avinash Kaushik. If you guys follow Google Analytics, he is, I hate to use the term guru, but he's an expert in this space. But he has a great saying that says, never let your campaigns write checks that your website can't cash. And we have to think about those things, right? We have to think about that when we're talking about data and we're preparing our marketing plans. And the reason is that most people that come to our websites today do not complete the desired actions we want them to. In fact, on average, only about 2% of them do. That means that 98 out of 100 people that come to your website don't do what you want them to do. They leave, right? So there's room for growth for sure. Now, this presents some challenges though, as DMOs, we're all drowning in data. We have data coming through in every different resource. TTRA has been a phenomenal resource for getting people together to talk about data, continues to be that way, but it presents challenges as well, right? We have all of these separate data sources that aren't easily unified where we can take action on it, right? And that's some of the things that our team is starting to work on now. So as the pandemic started to play out and we started to, much like all of you, start to reflect and look inward about ways that we could evolve and change, we knew that change needed to happen, right? We needed to evolve with the times and what was happening so we could better service our clients. And thus the customer experience team at Simpleview was born. That team is run by our CRO, Greg Evans, which many of you know. And our team, the Strategy and Insights group, sits under that umbrella to serve our clients. This way, we're able to help our clients as an extension of their staff, not only on the customer success side of the house, but we also knew that we needed to arm them with strategy and insights to help them better do their jobs, help them better with their marketing campaigns. So as part of that team, and I've got some of them here today, not all of them, on the top row is our strategy team. Our strategy team, I kind of look at them as our storytellers, right? They're the ones who take data and observe it and turn it into actionable insights. And then on the bottom row there, we've got our data team, right? Which is the ones who pull all of this data from all of these different resources and get it into a way that the strategist can start to digest that and create action from that. So on the call today, I've got Aaron Nissen. So Aaron, if you want to say hello really quick.
Hi, everyone.
Great. Katie Cook, who's our strategist who works on Aaron's team. So Katie.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
And then you may recognize our good friend, Grant Stoltz from the layover. We pick on Grant a lot only because he's one of my favorites. So Grant, welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jason. And I definitely need a new photo. Warren's getting picked on, sounds like.
Right. You still got a baby face on, but you still look great.
I know,
So
it's brutal.
good stuff there. And then last but not least, representing the data team is Paul McLeod, who's really our brains behind this operation. So Paul, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Great. So all this team right here is unified. And as we did a restructuring a couple of months back, we had one simple charge, right? And that was to create a team that was focused on arming all of you, many of our clients, with the data and insights they need to really better connect the dots and extract these actionable insights that lead to more effective campaigns, more effective contests, promotions, and really always on marketing, right? And it really, it's a resource to help all of you answer questions like, is my marketing leading to arrivals in my destination, right? I think Evan had registered for the session from Uber Media. There's someone who we work with who provides some fantastic data to allow you to be able to look at arrival type information, right? Which of your marketing channels are working effectively? You know, when people get to my destination, what are they doing? So these are some of the things that our teams chart doing. Now, we're going to keep continuing to provide you some of the great things we've always provided, like the layover each and every week to get that digital marketing news. Many of you who are on this call might even be great guests. So I would encourage you to reach out to Katie Cook if you have some insights that you want to share on the layover live. But we're also starting to formulate blog content around strategy and insights as well. Our marketing team does a phenomenal job of providing content, but now we're going to start parsing that content out and providing it into more of a data-centric view. And that's going to be provided on a monthly basis. So it's going to be focused around those actions that allow you to be able to execute properly on your campaigns. We're also going to be providing quarterly data stories. Many of you saw some of these. We did Marketing in the New Normal back in June. We recently launched our fall one, which talks about some things that DMOs should be doing around data in the fall. And we'll be launching one early in January around Q1. And again, all these are just bite-sized, trend-driven stories that really help you take this data from the macro out of the clouds and pull it down to earth a little bit and create some of that action. In addition to that, we're also doing weekly emails that are going to be coming out that give you little data nuggets that you can action on and maybe use for some of your stakeholder engagement meetings or board meetings. And lastly, then we'll be doing a monthly newsletter where we're going to be pulling data resources in and insights in, not only from the tourism pillar of the house, which is where I sit, but also for the meeting side, where Shimo sits, and also David Peacock on the stakeholder engagement side, and tying those all together, because it's important as we start to evolve that we're tying in all of these other pillars along the way. We also have, lastly, is our Data Insights Hub. Our Data Insights Hub sits in two different places. We have a world-facing view, which sits on Simpleview Inc.'s website. If you haven't done so, please check that out. And then we also have deeper, about 30 different dashboards that provide deeper insights and different ways to parse that data that sit inside our client portal. And Paul McLeod is on the call today. I'm going to have Paul just for a couple of minutes run you guys through some of these dashboards that are available to you. And it's really, really important that, again, as I said, we're drowning in data. We like to kind of categorize data into 3 buckets. It keeps it simple, right? Because again, you have all these different things coming at you. Along the way, we look at consumer sentiment and what the travelers are saying, right? Longwood's destination analyst, tourism economics with Ab Sachs and his great team over there, they provide a lot of that information. Then that web information, right? That should then translate into traffic on a DMO's website. That's where we sit very nicely. And then that should lead into what's happening with arrivals at your destination with partners like Uber Media, Arrivalist, Adara, and others. And so bringing all of that into one place is very, very important, so that, again, that you can action on it. So I'm going to turn things over now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to turn things over, Paul, to you. So Paul can spend a few minutes walking you guys through some of the great dashboards that are available to all of you for free. And then at the end, Paul's going to let you know how, if you want to be part of our data set, if you're not already, he'll show you a cool way of doing that so that you can be more an effective marketer. So Paul, I'm going to stop sharing on my side, and I'm going to turn things over to you now.
All right, coming up real quick here. Let's do this. And let's give you that. All right.
Perfect.
So yeah, as Jason said, we think these dashboards are really cool. They help provide a lot of context just for me when I'm analyzing things and trying to understand what's going on in the industry. So yeah, I wrote like a 2,000 word chapter of our state of search the other day using just these charts as evidence. So yeah, Jason showed this one before. It's our all sessions, and this is sort of, a good place to just start to look to understand how we're doing this data set, which is we just aggregate for, as Jason mentioned, we're up to 259 DMOs as of yesterday in the North American one. We also have a European version of this that has about 30 DMOs in it. But anyway, not only this is just the very basic view where we collect all the sessions and then match them up year over year by day of week, which I think is nice for this industry because there's such strong weekly patterns. But anyway, we assign regions to each destination, so we can sort of break down, depending on which part of the country the area is in, what are their trends like. And then we also do a cool thing that I'll show in a minute, where we break down the visitors to our sites by how far away they are from the destination that they're researching when they show up on the site. So anyway, this is useful because you can see not only the general devastation wrought by the pandemic, especially in the spring time, but also what's going on more recently. And you can see, a few things from this kind of data. Obviously, it's been really bad for losses this year, particularly before the summer. It was, really awful. But since then, we're looking at something like 80% of all traffic is still coming into our sites. That chart is not loading, or maybe that's just a long page. Anyway, I like this one because it can compare what's going on by channel. I hope you can see it on this via Zoom. But anyway, this shows in blue the daily year-over-year growth in sessions for all sessions. Then yellow is organic search, which I think is a better measure of the health of user interest in travel. And then the green is paid search, which shows you how willing DMOs are to spend to get in front of these people. And what's cool is not only that you can see this and see how it changes and has been getting closer and then it's sort of leveled off to being even, but you can start to filter it by the different dimensions that we have in the table. So for instance, if you're a destination in the Northeast, you might want to know what's the story for me as opposed to these other places. And you can see that it changes a fair bit once you start to get down into these areas. For instance, Drive has been, above 2019 levels for a few months now for the Northeast, which is really interesting. Or sorry, that's paid search session growth. I'm thinking of the wrong chart. So yeah, that region, after not spending early on, has really turned it on. Another interesting thing you can do though with it is start to look at, locals. Let's say we are not as interested in trying to reach them because they're not actually travelers anyway. So let's just look at people who are drive or fly distance away, meaning that they're at least an hour of driving away. And here you start to see, how different it can start to be when you do that. Let's even go over to organic search traffic and look at it there, which I think is even more interesting. So yeah, that's sort of the all traffic view. But with organic traffic, like I said, I think this is a better measure of the health of user interest in traveling, because this is totally user driven. This is, they have to go into, 95% of the time it's Google, type in a keyword, and then click on one of our sites to generate a session here. The other interesting thing is it's a little closer. You can see the gap is a little smaller with organic search traffic than it was with all traffic. But I think some interesting things here is like I was saying, that drive fly local breakdown. So we take all the sessions to all these websites and we get the location of the user when they do it, and then we break it down based on how far away they are. If they're 50 miles or less, they're locals. If they're 200 miles to 50 miles, they're drive, and otherwise they're fly. And that's straight line distance. So their actual driving distance would be a bit further than that. But anyway, I think what's really an interesting trend that shows up here, and then I'll turn it back over to Jason after this, is the way that you can see that locals were way lower through most of the year. And that's people, who are in market, whether they're travelers or whether they're residents. But lately, in just the past few weeks, everything has converged a lot, which is interesting. I think part of it is just that we have the holidays coming up, which means we have event information on our websites, which means that locals have something to look at on our sites. Events are by far skewed towards locals in terms of their audience. So with events out, that's why locals were so far down. And with events, happening despite the rise in cases in some areas, we've seen a little bit more local traffic coming back. And at the same time, we've lost a little bit in terms of fly and drive market users, perhaps because of those increased cases depressing travel demand a little bit. But you can see these trends are always changing. And even though the overall organic search gap you can see up here hasn't really changed that much in a few months, a little bit here and there, but overall we're pretty close to running at like the 10 to 20% down year over year rate all the time. But with the change in the composition of that stat, we can perhaps get more insight about what's going to happen in the future. Although it's not totally clear from this, it's definitely something to think about and ponder and continue monitoring. So anyway, those were some of my brief thoughts. There's a lot more you can do with these dashboards, but like Jason said, a few minutes, and I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, unless, Jason, you do want more, which I can do. You're muted, Jason.
How about that?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. Be careful what you ask for. Okay. Yeah. So good stuff there, Paul. I just wanted to give a peek into that. Let everybody kind of see some of the things that the team is working on and looking at providing. So I think that's really, really important. So I think now what I'd like to do, again, I know we're a few minutes into this, is really open it up to questions. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask of the team? I know you've got, some of the storyteller folks here, some of the strategy team. You've got Paul on the data side of the house. Happy to answer any questions whatsoever that you might have.
Jason, we have a couple in the chat.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to read them since I've got it open.
Yeah, read them and then we can figure out who's best
Okay.
to answer.
Jeffrey, hi Jeffrey, asked, is this dashboard for Simpleview hosted sites? I think he means hosted websites only. Simpleview hosted only.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yes.
Paul.
Oh, yeah. If you're a client at all, you can get into the client portal. So you don't have to have us for your website. You do have to have a Simpleview client portal login. We do have public facing versions as well at simpleviewinc.com/insights-hub, insights-hub, which slightly more limited set of charts, but you can look at the overall aggregates for sure there.
So I guess,
Then-
can I just
go
ask
ahead.
the question? I guess what I was asking is, okay, so Simpleviews hosts our B2B site or
Oh,
membership
sorry. You're saying
site?
who's in the data set? Is that the question?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we don't have Simpleview does not host our consumer site. So I was wondering, are we able to look at both of those, or
Yeah.
can I? Yeah.
So great question. The data set is focused on DMOs, and in fact, there's a whole page about the methodology on the portal there. But in fact, it's focused on county or city level DMOs, just because of that drive fly local breakdown. It doesn't really work for states.
Okay.
So it does not include only Simpleview hosted websites, but it mostly is, just because those are the ones we have access to. But there are other clients we work with whose Google Analytics we have in there. And yeah, so I would say it's mostly our sites, but by no means exclusively Simpleview sites, but it is exclusively DMOs.
Okay. Thank you.
No
Did I
problem.
answer your question, Jeffrey? Yeah.
I think so, but I'll follow up with you guys.
Okay, yeah. You know where to find us?
So we're a complicated client, so that's
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna keep asking the questions. Paul, I have a question about the search session growth. Is it increased COVID cases, you think, or seasonality, or a combo of both?
Yeah, so I mean, seasonality obviously affects the overall number. Let me share my screen again just to illustrate this. Boom, boom. There we go. So yeah, obviously, if you look at the raw organic search sessions here, you can see there's a pretty significant seasonal effect. I wish I had the roll up turned on this, because then you can see by month even more clearly. But if you look at the 2019 number, which is obviously going to give us the more normal seasons, the average daily organic search sessions is something like 500,000, maybe a little higher during the summer. And then during the shoulder season, we're down below 400,000. So, we're talking about a pretty significant swing in terms of just the average daily level. But that doesn't necessarily mean that growth is going to go, if we're doing annualized year-over-year growth. So we're comparing, the first Monday of November this year to the first Monday of November last year. And that should be fairly stable as we move through the seasons. And in fact, we do see that it is. So yeah, I think probably coronavirus news is a much bigger factor influencing the daily growth we see right now. And we've seen in, like I said, just recent weeks, as the news has gotten much worse again on that front, the drive and fly locals or drive and fly users are showing up on our sites a little bit less right now in the last few weeks. And if there's another chart, actually, I think I can show it right here. This is one that we haven't quite gotten into the portal yet. It will be there very soon. But this is showing by topic the organic search entrances to DMO websites. And you can see specifically what's fallen off in that time. So things to do has fallen off. That's the blue line you see up here, which was the strongest segment during the summer. Even that strength, though, is a little bit misleading, because it was significantly off last year's pace. But events have risen back up, as I was mentioning with the locals. They're actually almost caught up with things to do after suffering all year. And coronavirus pages have started to rise again. That's the purple line, after being very popular earlier in the summer. So I think that all suggests to me that we do have, particularly the rise of the coronavirus pages, that we are probably seeing a little bit of that being the influence causing that slight weakness in the drive and fly, the drive and fly users that is being counteracted by a rise among locals as the event information comes back.
Another question is, are all Simpleview clients' data being pulled into the data insights?
Anybody that we have Google Analytics access to, yes. We've tried to grab them all anyway. So like I said, it's 259 sites. That's after adding 30 of them earlier this week. So we're continuously adding them. And here's a good place to say, if you are in the database or would like to be, we actually are happy to provide a personalized, private, custom dashboard that compares your growth in all these different series to the industry and to your region and to a comparative set, all anonymized. And so, yeah, if you're already in there, which, like, if you're an SEO client or web client of us, you all probably are, then, you can just reach out to any of us here on this chat, or SEO@simpleviewinc.com, and they will be happy to get you set up with a dashboard that again compares you and is constantly refreshed every day with that information on all these metrics. And if you aren't in our database, we're actually eager to add anybody who's willing to participate. So you can just add Simpleview Inc. at gmail.com as a read access user in your Google Analytics. And then again, let us know through, that's SEO at simpleviewinc.com. And we'll be happy to get you added to the database and set you up with your private dashboard.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, to piggyback that, I think to echo your point is that none of anyone's individual data is shared with anybody else.
Totally.
I want to be super clear on that, right? And then that's why Paul said to reach out privately if you want to see how your particular destination stacks up against everybody else. We'll set up some private time for you to be able to do that, and then you can share that with your stakeholders or however you see fit. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Privacy is ultra important to us, and so I want to just make sure I echo that as well.
That's all the questions. Oh wait, here's one more. Do you know on average, share of usage of DMO websites for information by persons, prospective travelers? This will change with type of destinations, etc. Share of usage.
Is the question, how important is the DMO website to their travel planning?
That's, yes. Yes.
That's a good question. I've seen studies from like Longwoods and so forth about this question. Jason, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. I think I've seen those across Longwoods. I've seen those across Destination Analyst does these studies. They also do it for particular destinations for your own destination too, as well, if that's something you're looking forward to. I think I want to say that it hovers around 25 to 30%. But I think that varies. And it's going to be skewed now just because of what's happening in the world today. But, and it probably skews very heavily by destination as well, right? You're going to have some destinations that are ultra competitive where a DMO's website might be fighting or scrapping for those eyeballs and that attention. And you might have other destinations where they're the only authority in the space and where they might be a huge part of the travel planning process. So I think it really just, it depends. But the numbers I've seen typically from DA have been in that 25 to 30% of the time. In booking travel on that customer's, path to purchase is the numbers I typically see, if that helps at all.
Yeah, I've definitely, and it's also worth noting, I think DMO websites are typically, this might be something, we would all like to change, but typically higher in the funnel on the purchase process for travel. So more in the destination awareness and ideation phase. And less on the actual booking phase. And then, once they're in market, like I said, they often come back for event information to see, fill out their daily plan once they're actually doing the vacation.
Yeah. And I will add to that, I think that's probably one of and thank you, Paul, because I think you're spot on with that. That said, though, I think one of the biggest things for DMOs, or, I refer to it in the past as kind of the holy grail. And I say that because every time I talk with a rep at Google for the last 6 years, I've asked them about getting some of this information. That's why Aaron's smiling and laughing right now. And because this is one of his challenges, and this is one of the things that his expertise and his team is working on right now, trying to help solve some of these problems is, we know DMOs are ultra important and critical to the buyer's decision towards travel. I think you could probably argue the top of funnel is more important because we're trying to influence somebody to take that next step, right? So oftentimes DMOs don't get the credit I think they deserve for their influence on travel. All that credit oftentimes goes to OTAs or goes to Airbnb or somebody else. However, you primed them and brought them a beautiful lead through the door that you don't always get credit for. And so that's some of the things that our team is trying to work on, exactly why we're trying to do some of these things with our team. One of the big reasons why we morphed into this team was to help answer some of these questions. How can we help to show a DMO's value? Value is going to be questioned like it has never been before. And honestly, we've been saying some of these things for many, many years, knowing that this was going to come. As our boards are starting to get more savvy, a lot of them are coming from e-commerce side of the house. Rethinking the way we measure things is going to become more important than ever, for the fact that some of the metrics that we've typically measured to in the past, higher vanity metrics, aren't going to be good enough anymore when we start carving out budgets. They're just not. Right? coming to somebody and saying, great, I got 1 million impressions. Great, I was on these many channels on television. Great, I did all these things. That's awesome. How did that influence travel into the destination? That's what DMOs are going to start to be asked more and more and more and more. So DMOs are going to have to start showing that value and where they fit into that. And that's one of the things that we are is very critical and very important to us, is to help find ways for all of you to do those things. And Aaron, I don't know if you want to add to that at all, but it's an important thing to measure that DMOs are getting that credit for that top of funnel, and then passing that warm lead, so to speak, off to those OTAs, who then control that booking process, but then keep all that data oftentimes for themselves and don't share it terribly well. Anything to add on that, Aaron?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. I mean, the travel visitor economy is very distributed through, distributed content, distributed bookings, and it's getting a little bit murkier to fully qualify the effect of a DMO. Your website does remain one of the top measurable and influencing mechanisms for the tourism cycle. So, yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions and wants to go a little bit deeper, we're happy to dive in and, talk to you specifically about your destination, as different DMOs tend to play different roles throughout the path to purchase, some higher in the funnel, some a little bit lower towards the conversion, etc. So
Perfect. Yep, good point to make. Anything else, Miss Katie Cook?
Nope, nothing else that I see. Any other questions, you guys? You feel free. You can always just ask through Zoom or through your microphone. I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay. How about, I think I'm going to ask something really why we're on this, and I've seen this even in other conferences or other virtual events. Katie, you and I were talking as we were prepping for some of these things and to talk today, but, I would love to know, like, what's, if anyone's willing to share it. So maybe I'm setting myself up and no one's going to answer, but, what's the thing that's keeping you up at night? As we're moving past 2020 into 2021, what's the one thing that's keeping all of you up at night, right? Like, is it not having the data to tell your story? Is it not knowing what channels? Is it not knowing when to turn the paid faucet back on? Does anybody want to chime in and share any of that at all? Like, what are some of the things that are keeping you up at night? Because we would love to help you get some sleep. So if there's some things that we can do to help you with that, maybe I would love to hear if anybody wants to share any of that information.
Hey, Jason, I'd like to chime in. One of the things that's keeping me up at night is really not knowing what those new tourism metrics are, or those new KPIs. Everybody wants new ones. Nobody knows what they are. I'm frustrated. It keeps me up.
Oh my gosh, you probably spoke for many of us. I'm gonna give this one over to Aaron because I can see him just like. Okay, great question.
Yeah, great question.
Very common.
I think we've seen, especially through the pandemic, you've probably been on many webinars. There's been a lot of talk about data and measuring campaigns and ROI, et cetera, like that. So I think as we look to what DMOs need to do this year, they'll need to be more efficient than ever before. Budgets are tight, resources are tight. So proving value is kind of the name of the game. And that depends on each DMO structure, depending on how you're funded, if you're more of a T-bid or government funded, that kind of determines your value sets as in terms of what you measure. I think there's been a lot of development in geolocation data in terms of arrivals, measuring attribution, things like that. There's a lot of data players there. We work with Uber Media, for example, on that to provide services for clients to measure the impact of a website, analyze where people are coming from, and the effectiveness of campaigns. So in terms of some of the new metrics, I would say geolocation data and arrivals is kind of one of the hot trends lately. And then in terms of some of the softer measures in terms of your website, we've been moving towards blended metrics. So instead of just having website sessions and time on site and things like that, blending metrics to provide more of a singular metric that reflects a few activities on your website, which is primarily website engagement and then actions. If you are driving leads to partners or newsletter signups, we've got a metric that kind of consolidates those. So I'm
Aaron,
looking
with
towards that.
blended metrics, do you mean like an aggregate number or an indexed number?
Kind of
Does it
an aggregate
matter?
number.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, that's something we can definitely get into offline. I don't have any slides handy, but the idea of, how do you weight the value of a partner referral versus a newsletter sign up versus a visitor guide download or request. So what we've done is we've kind of customized some metrics that kind of blend those in terms of qualified actions to develop, qualified session index. So those are, some examples of metrics on your website. In terms of, other channels, like I mentioned, geolocation is kind of the big trend in terms of measuring actual arrivals. And then looking at, social media, I think, the concept of likes and followers is very outdated. I'd be looking at engagement metrics of what percentage of your community is engaging per post, which is a little bit more of a qualified metric of who's seeing your content, particularly as things like Facebook. If you don't engage your audience, the Facebook algorithm kind of doesn't show your content to people who haven't engaged lately. So despite having 1 million followers, you might actually only have an active follower set of about 100,000. So, so that's just kind of a little broad strokes of some of the metrics that we would look at, but blended metrics is something we're looking at websites. We've been rolling that out for a few other clients just to simplify it, because at the end of the day, what is the value of a website session? It's difficult to qualify that. So we've been trying to put, desired actions in combination with, website sessions to measure quality traffic to your website.
Yeah, and great. First off, this is a super common question, Jennifer, so I really appreciate you asking it, because it's something we get asked a lot. I mean, Aaron will tell you that the amount of people starting to raise their hand that want to do KPI audits with us has gone up dramatically, especially in the last 30 days for this type of thing. And it does vary destination to destination. So I hate to be the one that just like lumps everything, says everybody should be doing this, right? Because it's different. We're all different in some ways, and we're all alike in some ways. So I think we have to be careful with how we do those things. And we, the kind of things that Aaron's talking about, the kind of best practices and things are places where we start, but then we have to like evolve and have conversations with you to find out what's most important for you to tell your story. It's also, I will also add to Aaron's point with this great question that oftentimes it's also measuring the right metrics for the type of media you're placing, right? And let me elaborate on that. There's oftentimes when we're working with clients in our space where it's a heavy awareness campaign, right? They're placing a lot of stuff on like general television or in display, programmatic display, which is fine. But then their number one metric is conversions. And that's not a good metric to measure for that type of placement, right? So in addition to finding these overall KPIs and objectives, which Aaron's alluded to, it's also what secondary metrics along the way roll up to those that make sense, right? Am I measuring the right things for the type of media placement and messaging that I'm putting out there? I think that's something that could use some improvement across the board as well. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. I guess not, maybe not. Okay. How about anybody else want to share? And thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that. That's a really, really common question that we're hearing a lot about. But it's something worth considering, right? When we talk about right now the changing world, why would we not at least consider looking at our metrics again, right? It's scary to do that because it took us so much time to go to our stakeholders and our boards and get them to just buy into what we were doing. But we have to evolve and change. Now, look, you go through and do an audit and find out what you were measuring before is great. That's awesome, right? It doesn't mean you're blowing up the world. But I tell you, when things are happening and you kind of have the cover of COVID as part of that, it's a good time to look at what you're doing, not only with metrics, but how am I handling placing my media? How am I handling how our teams run campaigns, right? We talk about an agile marketing versus a conventional approach. Those are things that we're seeing a lot of DMOs go to. We've used that internally for a while. We see a lot of teams looking at that also. It's more, getting rid of like these 70-page marketing plans and going more for these short marketing plans that we can adjust and move very quickly because the world works that way today. So these are just some of the things that we should all be questioning as we move forward, so that when we come out of this and we start to get some more wind at all of our backs, and we will come out of this, I am certain of it. There's so much pent-up demand. As part of our Q1 data story that Aaron and the team put together, talking about this tale of two halves, right? first half is going to be very similar to probably 2020, especially Q1. But as we move into the second half, you're going to have a lot of people as the vaccine and we start to get closer to herd immunity. I think you're going to start to see a lot of people who are ready to go out and travel. So getting some of these ducks in a row and doing some tending the garden right now, I think is really important. So when the time comes to flip that switch back on, you're ready to run. Right.
Yeah,
So, and
maybe
you're
I'll
measuring
just-
the right things that tell your story. So yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, maybe I'll just chime in kind of as a general kind of way to wrap that up. But I would really be questioning how you're showing value to your partners. You know, as marketers, we tend to rely on reach and impressions, but when you look at what an impression truly is, if you scroll down a page and a banner ad pops up, that's an impression. You can't really qualify the activity of that. And that's where, looking at surveys or geolocation data to try and correlate the value of an impression to arrivals. And I think that's kind of the thinking that we need to do as DMOs or destinations is look at what are we doing and how can we measure the impact on the bottom line of the community and your stakeholders. And I think that's where we need to just, go beyond just impressions and some of those big numbers that we've always used just because they're simple and they're easy. So when we look at things like impressions, we also look at impressions and correlate that to website visitation or impressions to arrival rate from a market. So those are just, looking a little bit deeper beyond just a single metric such as impressions or sessions. And so that's probably where I would start is just looking at your own metrics and, look at finding better ways to further qualify what you're doing because, from an industry perspective, I can see how some hoteliers, et cetera, look at, big numbers like impressions and they don't see the correlation to hotel nights. And so as a DMO, I think that's kind of our job is to get better at communicating the value between, marketing activities and arrival activities, because that proves, economic value to your community.
You got it. Good stuff. Good conversation. We should be doing this every week. It's good. And that's one thing we said this on the layover at Katie and Grant like a million times, right? It's one thing that I love about this industry is that everyone's so open to share and talk about things, right? Yeah. There's some things naturally we keep close to the vest, but I love the fact there's enough travel to go around, right? I mean, it makes up 10% of global GDP. There's enough travel for everybody. So why are we not sharing so that we can all be better, right? If we can find ways to better tell our stories and show value in our communities, that's good for all of us. So that's what I love about some of these discussions is the fact that we all come together and share and openly share. That's not easy to do, by the way. So thank you all for
It's 7 a.m. on the West Coast, so I didn't show my screen. You know that. I've had a whole cup of coffee now, so now I'm like feeling good, and Aaron knows. Like I usually share my screen, but it's rough this morning. But I thought you said something really interesting about, I think it was Aaron, about kind of or Jason, it was you about the media and then like how and then like being judged on the website metrics side. And it would be interesting to look at, and I was looking at the dashboards because we collaborate so, well in markets, and looking at the dashboard, especially from a media perspective, when we're looking at high, mid, and low, and then how that's corresponding to like the monthly metrics or the changes that have been happening in the last 90 days. As we pivot and change our media and maybe even go, I'll just say in certain markets, lower funnel because of the changes, and then how kind of those shifts that are going to happen on the website. And I think just correlating it was interesting to look at your dashboard across, but then even on a client basis, seeing how that lines up with how we're talking about the metrics in the media and how that's lining up with what's actually happening to, kind of have that crossover to see if we should be shifting or doing something different or optimizing, or, it could be the media and it could be also content, so it's kind of meeting. That's why I spoke, because I'm a collaborator, but like meeting on that ground to go like, what should we be doing to optimize? Because it's usually not just one thing that we need to do.
Right.
Well, yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on with that. I think what it does though, by looking at it and turning over these rocks, right, it allows us to ask some of these questions so we can go dive in deeper, right? One thing when we look at these things in aggregate, is averages lie. We have to be careful, right? With some of these things, when we look at averages and look at some of these things, we have to dig below that surface to find out, is there something that's really pulling this down, right? And it just, whether related or not, an example of that is we work with a lot of clients on marketing automation and email. And when you look at like their average open rates, right? They might be like, oh, I've got a 20% average open rate. I'm doing great. This is great on an average. But then we start to pull back the layers and really look at the contacts in their database. And we find out oftentimes that many of them are very, very unengaged. And boy, if we would have pulled back that layer and not settled for like 20% was good enough, by just getting rid of the people who haven't engaged with you for 4, 5, and 6 years, you can, telling your 20% story was awesome, but now maybe you're getting a 40 or 50% open rate in your email, which isn't even a better story to tell. So we got to get out of some of those vanities of like, I got 100,000 people in my database, and get into these things and pull back these layers. I think, Mina, what you're saying is to look below the surface to say, hey, is there something else here that I could do? Maybe it is content. Maybe it is the placement. Maybe it's a combination thereof. But we don't know if we just look at that surface level. We got to dig through some of these things and find these pockets of opportunity. Anybody else want to share? That's a good point to make.
Yeah, I have a couple things. It's kind of dialing it back a little bit, less than about the engagement, but about the KPIs. And honestly, it is just as simple as for Jennifer, is going to your stakeholders and asking them what they want to know.
Boom.
And then build out from there. Because you don't want to create all these in a vacuum, and then when you push them out, they're like, what the hell are these? What do these mean to me? Nobody has time anymore for that kind of stuff. And then the second thing is that I think resident sentiment is an extremely important change that many of us kind of like had in the back of our head, but now it's become much louder. And so how that all fits into the strategy that you're doing. And the interesting thing is that this is more on the state side, but on the DMO side as well, that even certain states that's in their charter, like Texas, as Katie knows, for example, it is legally worded in the legislature that Texas is not allowed to market to a state resident. So that the DMOs and the other people supported them. Well, obviously those things I think may be changing or will change. But also I think that that the challenge is that I won't name the DMO, but there's a large DMO, not a state, that did run a local campaign around Labor Day weekend, and the chatter among in social media, Twitter, Instagram, etc., and Facebook was so loud and so negative because the community didn't understand the role of the DMO, and how can you be advertising during a pandemic? But when they ran it in their source markets, they didn't have any problems at all. But the problem was that there was enough damage that was done in the first phase, the local, stay for a couple night phase, that is kind of the thing. So these are the nuances that are not built into anything, that I think those are the things we have to start thinking about now as we open up.
Jeffrey,
or reopen again after this wave.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I think this is an issue that, over tourism is another example of that, but, driving the right visitors to provide economic value, not just going by more visitors, more, because in some communities, it's, over tourism is a legit concern. And so I think that, what you're saying is spot on, is that we need to be community stewards and ambassadors and lead the community and work with the community, not just drive this insatiable tourism, because there's such a thing as bad tourism, visitors that come in and don't necessarily provide, value to the community. In terms of, Amsterdam as an example, we're getting a bunch of 18-year-old kids just wanting to go party. That's not a good tourism to them. So they've really tried to dial that back. So I think this pandemic, DMOs are now forced to work more with the broader stakeholder set, not just hotels, to be a force of good in your community, of driving good revenues that benefits everybody. Because at the end of the day, tourism should improve the tax burden, the quality of life for residents, if done, properly.
Yeah, you guys all bring up a good point that certainly the DMO's role in bridging that gap more and more, really more than ever, with our local communities is not just how it's going to be. And we're having a lot of these conversations at the leadership level within our organization as well, because could not agree more with all the things that you're saying. That's going to play a big part of it. It's also the DMO evangelizing how the rest of the community plays a part in tourism as well. You know, we often, you know, we're quick to point the finger when things aren't going well at the DMO, but oftentimes the DMO is really up until this point has been really involved in getting them to there. Once they get there, they have to have a great experience along the way. So we inspire others to come there. So it's truly a symbiotic relationship between the community and the DMO. But I think to your point, Jeffrey, I think you're going to see a lot more of DMOs are going to have to work more closely with their communities so that we're bringing the right type of traveler, to Aaron's point, to the destinations, and that we're evangelizing that and doing it in a proper way. So really, really good points, guys. Probably got time for one more if somebody has another point to bring up. Other than that, we'll wrap it up if no one has anything else to discuss. But again, thank you all for being engaging. These are some of the sessions I think during this whole time I value the most. Anything else out there? Katie, you see anything else in the chat?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Well, I think that brings us to an end. So on behalf of myself and the Strategy and Insights team, guys, then at Simpleview, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for listening to us. Again, please know you know, we do not exist without you. So we are here to help in any way we can, answer questions, help you dig through your data, help you with your next campaign, whatever it may be. So please reach out to us. You know, you should have access to my email address or others' email address if you need that. I can be reached at jswick@simpleviewinc.com. So thank you all for your time today. Really appreciate it. Look forward to doing this again soon.
Great.
Thank
Bye,
you,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy.
Yep. Thank you very much.
So long.
See you guys.